Hey everyone, on a scale of 1 to 10, how fed up are you already with the Harry Kane scenario of is he staying, isn't he staying, is he being disrespectful, ain't he being disrespectful? I mean, I think the one thing that is absolutely clear is that the only people that really know what's going on are Harry Kane and his family, Man City and Tottenham Hotspur. They're the only people that really know what's really going on here. You've got all these people coming out saying this, that and the other and all the rest of it. But ultimately they've got their own agenda, right? So Sky Sports need you to stay interested in their Sky News channel because they rely on the advertising that's on it. Newspapers, radio, they all rely on their clickbait stuff to get the advertisers in and so on. In people are all trying to get their own, name out there. I told you first and all this stuff, right? But the facts are clear, right? Harry Kane is a footballer under contract. If he wants to go and win medals because he's got enough money and he's not really bothered about money as such, and he wants to go off and win medals to be seen as the great player that he is, because you can't stay at a club and not win trophies and still be classed as a legend by breaking records apparently, which surprises me seeing as how Alan Shearer is considered the greatest goal scorer because he scored 300 goals or whatever it is, and yet he only won one set of trophies, as in Premier League. Didn't win anything else, went back to his home club and won nothing. And yet he's still classed as a legend, but apparently you can't be a legend if you don't win silverware. Okay, fine, so another argument. Anyway, I digress. So if Harry Kane wants to go off and he wants to win silverware, then clearly Man City is probably his best bet. It's probably his best bet. But are Man City going to pay what Tottenham want from him? And ultimately, you can argue that we might want too much money for him. And that's fine. That's fine. You can argue that, right? But a valuation is a valuation. It's like when you're selling your house. If you're selling your house for 300 grand or 500 grand or whatever, and someone comes in and says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you, I don't know, 200 grand. Are you going to accept it? Are you going to just get the deal done? No, of course you're not, right? So you are selling an asset that's under contract, right? So I don't blame Tottenham, if this is what's going on, for fighting to get the best deal possible, right? Because you've got to potentially reinvest that in the club, in the team, and so on. And yeah, that's a whole other debate about what happens to the money. Apologies for the dogs barking. They've obviously seen someone walking down the street. But so I don't blame them. I don't blame them for that, right? But all of this about Harry Kane, going on strike and all the rest of it. In all the years that we've seen Harry Kane playing at Tottenham, have you ever really seen him do anything that is unprofessional and disrespectful? I can't say I have. I can't say I've ever seen him do anything like that. So why all of a sudden would he be that desperate to go to Man City at this point that he would force something through like that? Influence from Gareth Bale? Perhaps. Influence from Jose Mourinho? Perhaps. But ultimately, your DNA is your DNA, right? So he doesn't strike me as that sort of player. So for me, until he comes out and says, I'm not playing, I'm not going to go there anymore, I want to force me move through and all the rest of it, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Essentially, I'm not going to believe that. I'll wait and see, right? Because he's been on holiday, he could be isolating, he may be in contact with the club and say, look, I ain't coming back yet for whatever reason. There might be a perfectly reasonable explanation. And these media outlets and so on are just using it to spin it for their own ends. And listen, everyone's got to make a living, right? And everyone's got a job to do. And it's their jobs to dig up these kind of stories and make all this stuff up. But ultimately, we don't know, right? So, you know, do I want Harry Kane to leave? No, of course I don't. I mean, he's the best player at the club. He's been our best player for a long time now. But players move on. You know, ultimately players move on. And if he moves on, he moves on. If he moves on and he wants to win, he wants to win medals, and that's what he's going to do. Then for me, this is about business and about making sure you get the right amount of money. Because I don't want a player at my club who doesn't want to play for my club. Because if they don't love my club as much as I do, then I'm not interested in them. Right? I'm not interested in them. You know, they can go and do one. But I don't begrudge him going off to another club if that's what he wants to do. But at the same time, I don't want to be shafted over the deal. I don't want to be stitched up and left, with pennies when pounds is what you're looking for. So you've got to look into that element of it and stand your ground and not be bullied around. Let's be honest. If Man City pick up Harry Kane, then what chance is there for anybody else in the league? What's the point? Right, you might as well say, well, this is like the Scottish League or the Spanish League, where there's only ever going to be two teams in it, and all you're doing is just, you're also rounds, just going for the same old thing. I mean, for me, that's just, it's just poor, and it's just ruining the game. We talk about against modern football and all the rest of it, but then we laud clubs like City for buying the very best players from around the world and essentially setting up their own Galacticus kind of scenario, Harlem Globetrotters of football, that kind of thing. And we all sort of go, oh wow, what a squad they're getting together and all the rest of it. Yeah, great, well done them. Just ruins it for everybody else because it's pretty pointless, really, if that's all it's about. So ultimately, I just think it's killing the game. I think it's just really, the way it's going. I just don't get that from it. I mean, I go to football essentially for the entertainment of it. I want to watch a good game. I want to see our players play well. I want to see us win. I want to meet my mates. I want to have a sing song. I want to have a jump about and that kind of stuff. It's about the whole day. It's about the whole TV. And for me, this kind of stuff is driven by Sky and the big TV companies. It's just driving this idea that all the players have to be at certain clubs, the fashionable clubs, the money clubs, and all the rest of it, and nobody looks at the ethics behind all that. I mean, £150 million for one footballer is obscene. It's an obscene amount of money, and there's not that many clubs around that can do it, and do that in the fair process. As in you're using your income to generate your sales and purchases of your players. Again, it's all just it's all just wrong. But listen, I'm rambling to a certain extent because this is just about, it should have just been about my views on the Harry Kane scenario. But the reality is, until we know, we don't know. So you have to kind of take it all with a pinch of salt and see what happens. There's no point getting agitated. There's no point getting upset. There's no point calling Harry Kane out or Charlie Kane or his family or anybody else. At the end of the day, if Manchester City put in a bid that's acceptable for Tottenham and Harry Kane wants to go there for whatever reason, then that's when the deal's done. Until then, we wait and see. If Harry Kane behaves in a way that the club come out and say he's on strike or he's behaving like a twat or whatever, he's making it difficult, then you can have your feelings on that scenario. The only other point I would make about it is that this is a two-way street, right? Because if you consider how Danny Rose was treated by Tottenham Hotspur, and I have to say, there are lots of people out there that don't have any time for for Danny Rose, but I do. As a person, I think he's a decent lad, and I think he said a lot of stuff that a lot of us fans say week in, week out, day in, day out when we're talking to each other or we're talking on blogs or whatever. But if you look at how he was treated in terms of, pushed to the under-23s, totally disrespected and all that, let's just realise that this is a business and that how businesses work and how employees are treated, whether they are £150 million footballers or whether they are, £10 an hour people working in a warehouse. It's all relative. It's about how you treat people, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So, until all the details come out, until the whole scenario is resolved, you've got to keep an open mind and wait and see what happens. For me, if Harry Kane goes, he goes. Gutted, disappointed, but we see where that leads us, and we move on, because ultimately I'm not going to stop supporting Tottenham because Harry Kane has left. I'll be supporting whoever steps up in his place, whoever is playing in his position. That's what I'll be doing. And Harry Kane will be a forgotten footballer in the same way that I loved Glenn Hoddle, but when he went to Monaco, I wasn't interested in Glenn Hoddle, and when he came back for Chelsea, I wasn't interested, and it'll be the same for any player that leaves. When Gareth Bale went to Real Madrid, wasn't interested, You're not my player. Same with Modric, Berbatov, Carrick. It happens time after time after time. Your best players will always get poached by those clubs that can offer the biggest amount of money and the biggest opportunity to boost your ego with silverware. It's the way it is. Personally, I think we should be looking at more about how fair the process is, how fair the system is, how fair the league is, and how we make it competitive, as opposed to Chelsea, Man City and Man United or whoever, spending the most money and therefore just sweeping the board. And I know there are exceptions, before anyone calls me out. Absolutely there are exceptions. But, you're always going to have a situation where a team is going to beat the bigger team. It happens. Freak results happen. So, let's not get ahead of ourselves. And you only need a freak result for a big team to get knocked out of something before the opportunity opens for somebody to pick up a medal here and there. So congratulations to those teams that have done that. Unfortunately, we've not been one of them. We've never taken that opportunity. But hey, I'm waffling. I'm rambling. Hope you all understand where I'm coming from. Leave your comments, leave your questions. I'm more than happy to come back. I do read them all, and I do try to answer as many of them as I can. And until we meet again, up the Spurs.